All right, well, Patrick, thanks for having us. Can you go back? I wanted to get that survey. Maybe.
So this is more of an interactive session, so if you guys have your laptops, feel free to follow along. The code's out there. It's not too bad to follow along. So.
Yeah, if you don't have your laptop or you just want to watch, that's fine. He's going to walk through it, so you can just watch him instead. So I posted a link on the meetup. I just put a comment in there. So I just have a GitHub repo, and the repo is nothing fancy. I just created a new project inside Android Studio, and it said, hey, what do you want? And I'm like, login activity sounds like fun. So it's the default login activity that Android Studio creates for you. That's all you're seeing in the code if you check it down or clone it or whatever you're going to do with it. It is designed, don't do presentation mode. Well, I guess you could. It just get really cumbersome switching to show in project view and whatnot.
I'm just trying to make it. Does everyone see that all right?
Well,
Back? No.
when- When we get into the coding, we can bring into presentation mode so you guys can see the code. There's a couple things we want to go over first before we get into the code. So can you change your from Android to project? All right. So the first thing that you might notice now with Studio when you create a new project is they add in a test folder. So before you have app, Android test, main, now you have test. Just like any traditional Java development with Maven or Gradle, you get your app main source resources and test source resources, all that stuff. We finally get that ability with Android Studio, or not Android Studio, with Android itself. And when you bring this into Android Studio, it creates the folder, but it won't be a source folder right away. In order to switch to unit tests from instrumentation tests, you have to change your build variant. So in the bottom, was that left corner, they've got some vertical options. One of them is favorites. I've never clicked on it. Actually, I'm curious. But the other one is build variants. So if you fly open the build variant box, you can switch between instrumentation test and Android test. And all this really does under the covers is tell Android Studio, hey, here's the source set to use. Instead of using app Android test, or app source Android test, use app source test instead to keep it in my class path. So when you compile and all that stuff, Android Studio knows to look at these certain folders. The dudes on the tools team at Google are smart, and they realize that this kind of sucks, but it's like a partial win for now. They are looking at combining it down the road, but for now, at least we have regular unit tests, and we don't have to spin up an entire Android JVM to run our tests. You can close the build variants. So the folder structures are a little bit different. If you're used to Java development, you should feel at home. If you're used to Gradle and you're used to running the connected Android test, connected Android test script, there's now just a test Gradle command. I'm going to over here. There's a Gradle on the right. On the right-hand side, there's a Gradle flyout for the Gradle plugin. If you go in here and you expand this out, choose app. Go to verification. So here you'll see there's now a test Gradle task, and if you run that, the Android plugin understands, oh, I need to run the unit tests. And the test task is attached to assemble and some other stuff. So you throw it into CI, your CI server, it should pick it up. If not, you can manually type in the test task and just do Gradle w test, and it'll run your unit tests for you in the command line. All right, you can make Gradle go away. You're on master, right? All right, so the first thing you'll need to do to get...
Step one.
You're on step one?
Go to master.
Yeah, go to master, it's fine. Did you do a stash? Did you have any changes?
I don't think so.
All right, well, it's no big deal then. So the first thing you'll probably do is you'll check out your build.gradle file. So under your app, you look at your app's build.gradle file. Yeah, he's a big fan of the Android view. I'm a big fan of switching between project view and Android view depending on what I'm doing. If I'm doing like folder maintenance project level stuff, I switch up. But if you need to get to it, it's really easy to get to your Gradle files inside the Android view. Now you can go into presentation mode. All right, is this easier to see now? Sweet. So the one thing you'll notice is before you used to have Android test compile, and all those libraries you would put in there would be picked up for your Android instrumentation tests. Now they have a test compile function in their plugin, which allows you to say, I want jUnit to be in my class path when I run my unit tests. When you build a project in Android Studio now, it automatically throws in jUnit 412, which is really nice. But when you write unit tests, you should hopefully be using more than just jUnit. You might want to use Mockito or Hamcrest. There's something called assertJ, which is a more expressive way and is like a builder pattern type of feel to it for testing. Jake Wharton wrote assertJ for Android, so you could do something like assert that view has text or something. But those are typically good libraries to throw in there. So if you check out the first step of this kata, those libraries will show up there for you. It's like Alt F12, I don't remember. Oh, that's smart. You got to click on the file in Studio. All right, so you'll have jUnit. assertJ is pretty cool. I've used it a little bit. The more I use it, the more I like it. It's basically well, you'll see the Hamcrest way of doing things, but instead of having a bunch of matchers that you pass in to the assert that function, you can just say assert that dot is greater than whatever, and it gives you a more functional way of looking at it. We have Hamcrest and Mockito, and then we'll get to PowerMock later. How many of you guys have heard of Mockito? Awesome. How many of you guys have heard of PowerMock? Yeah. So PowerMock we'll talk a lot more later about. It's a really cool tool that is almost paramount for Android testing. So the first thing to look at, since this is a talk on unit testing, we should probably cover TDD a little bit, right? So the first thing is a unit test. There's a password validator test. Command-Shift-O. Password validator test. Oh, maybe it's in step 2. I might have lied. Yep. It's not going to be there. All this was just the Gradle. Go back to presentation mode, though. So the first step, the first branch. So what I basically did was I made a branch for each step, so you can walk through each step at a time in its own branch and see isolated what's going on. Step 1, just have the Gradle file changes. If you do git checkout step 2, this will have a unit test to start the coding with. So Vanna White here is checking out step 2 on this screen. But if you do Command-Shift-O and then type in password something or another, there it is, you will have this beautiful test show up. And in true TDD fashion, you should write your test and run it, and it should turn black, or not black, it should turn red, right? So our test is clearly failing. We have compilation errors. So we should try to get our test to pass. So Clark, how do you get this test to pass?
Let's see. First of all, we need to create this class, build validator.
It's not a class.
Sorry, interface. And I'm going to have to fix that. Interface build validator. Take the default. Okay, we have an interface.
Command-Shift bracket to go back. You should have been. Do Command-E then. Command-E is just recent files. So I hate the mouse. So if you ever want to know a keyboard shortcut in IntelliJ, I could probably almost tell you it.
So field validator.
Alt enter, and it should help you out. Yeah. That's fine.
Notice it picks up implementation of field validator.
So basically what you see is when you do TDD in Android Studio, you just write your test and Android Studio writes all the code for you.
And create this method.
So the goal here is we have a login page, right? We just took the default login page from Android Studio, and you have a username, password. So we're going to build validators on those input fields. But those validators, you know, just special logic that isn't Android specific. It's
That's a good name.
field. So the goal is you're going to have a validator, and it's going to turn back an int, and that int is going to be a string resource. So your validator could say, look, here's what's wrong, and here's the message you should display back to the user. So it kind of does a little two-factor or twofold thing there. Probably not the best solid principle, but it's nice for this example. So we have a password validator, and the first test we have is just what's a valid password. And password 1 will pass in, and we'll get a status message, and we will assert that status message is equal to r.string.success. How many of you guys are used to jUnit 3 where you do like assert true? How many of you guys have had tests fail and it just said assert true but was false? Doesn't that blow? So these are all called Makito matchers, not Makito. These are Hamcrest matchers. And they will build a very nicely displayed error message for you saying, look, you expected success. This one might be weird because it's going to give you the value inside R. But it's going to say expected this integer, but was this other integer. And you never have to worry about asserted true, but was false. This gives you a message that tells you everything you need to know for you out of the box. That's one reason why Hamcrest is really powerful.
So Ben, what's the keyboard shortcut to run this test to see if we can make
Oh.
it work?
So you can do a Command Option R, and it'll give you a dialog box of things. Oh, it's D. Sorry, scoot your fingers over one. It's Option Control R. So Option Control R gives you a dialog box of things you can run, and IntelliJ tries to figure out recent classes you've been in that are runnable and whatnot. If you do Command Option R, you can debug them. The other option is Option Control D, and that also will do the same thing for debug. So if you run this test, it should hopefully pass, right?
What about pick and why?
So number 2 is this individual test. If you want to run just this one jUnit test, you can do it by clicking on number 2. If you want to run this entire class of tests, you can do number 3. And then IntelliJ throws more options, and the numbering's always off. I don't know why their numbering's off, but sometimes you'll see it duplicated, and that's okay. What happened? Oh, you didn't implement the method. So we have a compilation error. Maybe you didn't implement the method. Oh yeah, so hit Command B. And here's our interface. So McDub's right. We added the method to the interface, but if you hit Command Alt B, it freaks out because it goes no implementations are found. So we need to go into the password validator. So Command E. And it's going to say this a red squiggly line. I really wish like Bill Gates did this for spell check. It would make writing documents in college so much easier. Just hitting Alt Enter to fix whatever it was. And now we implemented this. If we run this test, it will fail. But to make our test pass, all we need to do is just return back r.string.success. This success string I threw that in the strings file for you. So if you're doing this stuff, you already have that string. You don't have to worry about creating the resource. And now he's inside a different class, but he's still able to run his tests. All the numbers in parentheses mean it's a different configuration inside IntelliJ or Android Studio. I don't know why it gets all wonky. So this was great. This was probably a lot to take in. So let's do one more small exercise. If you stash your changes in Git, so you do like git stash, and then you do git checkout step 3. All right, and then you come back to the tests, the password validator test. Ooh. Oh, yeah. Don't do that. Do Command Shift O. Command Shift O. So between step 2 and step 3, I refactored and put things in a package. So that's why some classes disappeared. Sorry about that. So I wrote a new test just for more practice on it. And this new test is just to say, is a password valid or not? So you can say something like assert that validator.isValid with this password is equal to true. So this is like the same thing as doing assertEquals or assert true in jUnit 3. This is kind of a way to do it with jUnit 4 and and Hamcrest.
I'm going to talk about the answers to the steps as well.
Oh yeah, if you guys are following along and you want to see the answers, if you do git checkout whatever step you're on -answer, that's how you get the completed answer for that step. So if you did git checkout step 3-answer, you can see the answer for this step.
Before going on with step 3, do we have any questions? Anything you want us to?
Step 3 is just a rehash of step 2. So yeah, for this step, we're just going to see if a password's valid. So again, we wrote our test first, and now we need to write code to make it pass in a TDD manner. So we're going to create a method isValid, a Boolean. It creates it inside our interface. That's fine. That's fine. Now if we go inside our implementation, Command Shift O, password validator, we need to implement that method. And to tell if a password's valid, we can just shortcut it and just say return validate password equals r.success or r.string.success, not inside there. 1 over. All right, so if it's a valid password, we get a success message back. This is just to show you a little bit more steps of like a TDD manner of doing it. So if you run your test now, oh, that's cool. No, go to the number 1. That one still is there. Yep. Oh, wait. You already have run the test, right? You can hit Control R and it'll auto do it. So if you've already run your test, you know how like in the top of Android Studio you have a drop down that says app, and you can push it down, you can see other options of running things. Whatever's up there in that drop down value, you can hit Control R on your Mac and it will take that guy and run it automatically for you. So you don't have to keep doing this dialogue each time, you can just do it one keystroke faster. Did it work?
No, because we moved it.
Oh,
I
okay.
switched back to the file. And
Cool, that works too.
we're in.
Sweet, our test pass. We are now TDD experts, right guys? So let's go on and look at a little bit more tougher problem. If you want to stash and do step 4. In step 4, we're going to say, okay, well, if you're going to give us a password can't be blank, right? So we're going to have 2 new tests if they pass us a null password or if they pass us an empty password. And we're going to have to write an implementation for it. So assert that validator.validate null returns back the error field required message. And yeah, these could be combined into one test. It doesn't have to be 2 separate tests. It's just preference style was really what it comes down to. I was just trying to make it look like I wrote tons of code for you guys. So if we run these tests, it should fail. And if we want to get this to pass, there it is. So this is the message that you get with Hamcrest. Now because we're doing things with r.string, we get the auto-generated ID from the build time at Gradle, or from build time at Android. So we'll get expected whatever, but was this. And if you're doing things like when you're checking out strings, it makes a lot more sense, like expected is this string, but was this other value instead. So the formatting is really cool. You never have to worry about assert true but was false. You get a cooler message like this. So let's go ahead and try to get these tests to pass. So if we go to validator.validate and we do, no, go back. And you do Control Option B, it'll take you right into the implementation of that message, or of that method. So let's go into our validate method, and solve this. One method up. Yep. Hit enter just because IntelliJ is trying to lambdify it. So how do you guys tell if a string is empty? What do you guys do? Executables. What was it? Sorry, Patrick, what? Shh, that's next step. If assuming you couldn't use that, what would you do? I'd pull an Apache Commons. No. Just. Yeah, so the sheep and lamb's clothing over here basically says if password is not equal to null and password dot is empty, or I guess is not empty. So is empty, yep. You'll have to put a not in there. Return your success, otherwise return the other guy. r.string.error field required. So this is fine. This will make our test pass, right? So if you run your tests again, they should all pass. Yay. So let's go ahead and stash our changes and go to the next step. We'll get to that.
You have to add all this stuff too, right?
Yeah, you'd write a new test for that, saying validate password with this constraint and that constraint. And we'll get to that in our last step. So here we still have the same tests, but if we look at our validator, go into the validate method. Command Alt B. Yep. If we go in here, now we have this really cool test. And like Patrick called out earlier, we should use textutils for strings. Textutils is in the android.txt package. So it's an actual Android class given to us. If we try to run our tests now, let's see what happens. Man, you lost your confidence one. You should be good going forward because it's in the same package. We get this beautiful error message. Method is empty inside textutils, is not mocked. If we look at it inside the runtime at test time, we'll see that all of the Android classes throw unsupported operation exception with this message. There's a couple ways to approach this now. We go, wait, we've been doing TDD this whole time. This is wonderful. How do we can't just stop now. We're so close. One option is to add a test options config inside your build.gradle file that says to allow like a default implementation. And so what it does at runtime is it throws in this mocked Android jar that just returns default values, which will get you a little bit further, but you're still going to be like, crap, I need to test what happens with other behavior, besides just return false every time. I want to return true sometimes and see what happens. So you're still going to get stuck. And how many of you guys have used RoboElectric? Sweet, all three of us. RoboElectric is cool because what it does is it takes the Android implementation, the Android mock stuff, writes out implementations for things you need, like bundles and intents, textutils. But it's always a little bit behind because it's not the Android people, it's like people at Square trying to make their lives easier. No, it's not Square? I thought Square adopted it. I could be wrong. It's someone else that's not right here in Cincinnati. So they're always a little bit behind because Android comes out and then they got to see what's changed and retrofit all their stuff for Roboelectric to work. But Roboelectric's goal is I want to write a unit test that runs on the JVM. I don't want to have to deploy it and run it on an Android device. I want to run it on the JVM inside Android Studio, wherever. So Roboelectric's nice, but with this, you might not have to use Roboelectric. You can have a little bit thinner layer there. So you can include just the default mock with a build.gradle flag, but you're still going to have some issues. So what you can do instead is you can use power mock. What power mock is it's a way to mock out static methods. You can also use Mockito for like bundles where you're just using regular methods. But for textutils.isEmpty, you have a static method that takes in a parameter. It's really tough to get around that because static methods are attached to a class at compile time. It's all bytecode driven, so you can't really get a proxy around it at runtime. Power mock, on the other hand, has a special jUnit runner that will modify and build a proxy around it for you. So let's learn some power mock. How many of you guys have used power mock again? Like 3 of you, right? Okay. So go to the top of the test. Oh, heard of it? Okay, so 2 of you then? So to use power mock, how many of you guys have ever done development with Spring? Yeah, do you guys remember writing like integration tests and you'd be like, runs with Spring jUnit runner? Power mock is very similar. So we have to do the runs with annotation and feed it in a runner for jUnit to use to run its tests with. So run with. Yeah, so one issue we're about to run into is power mock runner is run with only works once. You can't be like, run with this myriad of runners. So if you're doing something like Dagger with Espresso and power mock, what's that? Oh yeah, .class. You're going to get screwed quickly because you can't combine them. You have to almost build your own runner that combines the other runners in order to get somewhat farther. So that is one limitation of runs with. The next thing you have to do for power mock is say, I want to prepare a certain class that has static values for this test. So there's like 3 different ones. There's like prepare for test, prepare only once, and something else. I've always just used prepare for test at prepare. Keep typing, just keep typing prepare for test. There it is. Yeah. And now this takes in an array of classes. So an array, do the braces, curly braces. So this will take in testutils.class. Maybe you do like your own static classes you can pass in, comment delimited. It's all annotation based, so all these things get figured out at compile time and interpreted. So all we're doing so far is just saying, hey, we want to run with power mock, and we want to prepare testutils to be proxied, essentially. So in our setup method, we have to do one more thing. And everyone said they've used Mockito before, right? In Mockito, you either use the mock annotation or you just say the mock static method, mock, and you pass in your class that you want to mock out. Here we do something very similar. Type in mock static, capital S, sorry. Parenthesis, textutil, third one, .class. And then you should be able to statically import it with Alt-Enter. Yeah. So we're just statically importing mock static from power mock. And this is kind of just boilerplate crap. We've already told power mock we want to run with you. And we've already told it we want to prepare these classes for this test, but that's not good enough for power mock. We got to also say, hey, mock out this class as well. So in your before method or setup method, you want to tell it, hey, mock static as well. It really sucks when you do one and forget the other. So that's why I'm like spending so much time on this, is it'll bite you later. So now we've created a prepared for test. We told Makito, hey, watch out for text utils. Let's start talking about behavior. So inside our null password, we want to have the text utils return back true, right? So we want to say if text utils says it's empty, we want to force that behavior. So we can say when. Now, what you'll see with when is you'll see there's two. There's one from PowerMock and there's one from Makito. The one in PowerMock actually delegates down to the Makito one. So if you want to save yourself a couple nanoseconds at runtime, just use the Makito one. Yeah, either of those are fine. So you just say when textutils.isEmpty. And this is where you get to like whole debates about, the assemble, assert, annihilate, and all that stuff. Do you put you're looking for certain strings here, or do you just take everyone? And this works just like Makito from here going forward. So we'll just say any string, and we'll statically import that method after you type it. There you go. So when textutils.isEmpty, and it takes in any string as a parameter to that static method, so it can be null, whatever your code runs and passes to textutils, this behavior is going to be invoked. Then return true. Yep. So by default, booleans are false. So we only have to mock out the true ones here for textutils. That's why we're only adding behavior to this method and the next one. Actually, just run this now so they can see the difference. So we did our assemble. So the first line here is our when clause. We've assembled the behavior we want to have when our test runs. We're doing our action, we're validating on null, and then we're doing our assert. So we're doing all of the the proper way of testing real easily.
Notice we still failed here, but null password was not the failing test. It was empty password, where we haven't mocked out that behavior yet.
Do you want to do that?
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know, you guys have all written unit tests before. Do you put stuff in the before clause? Do you put it in each individual test? It's all the same. However you've been doing it, you can still do it. It's just now you have to mock out some static methods when you do things with Android. Boom. What was it? Oh, so great. We've now validated password. I can't remember. Are we on step 5?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So if we go to step 6, we can make this a little bit more interesting and say, a password has to have at least 8 characters. And so if we stash and check out step 6, all right, go back here. Too short, yep. So there's a too short password. So PASS is too short, and you'll get a specific error message back. We can write code to make this test pass if you guys want, or we can look at assertJ real fast. What do you guys want to do?
How about assertJ?
AssertJ, let's do it. All right, so let's look at some magic here with AssertJ. So delete the too short password because that one's going to fail. All right, what was that? Oh yeah, do add ignore because this isn't in Git at all and we can't revert. So my favorite annotation in Grumpy Cats as well is add ignore. What it basically does is, unlike at override where you're saying, hey, do this, override the explicit from my super and do this function, add ignore says, when you run this jUnit test, forget it even existed. So we can still keep the test. It's going to fail because we didn't implement it, but at least when we run our tests, we won't see a red rash or a red failure somewhere. So on the null password, on the assert line, so after the validate. Yep. So to use assertJ, it's really simple. They have a class with a bunch of static methods called assertions. So do assertions, capital A, assertions. Keep going.
Oops.
His Kentucky accent picked up. He put an extra R in there.
Searching.
Yep.
No.
So you'll see here it's org assertJ core API. When Jake wrote it for instrumentation test for views on Android, it's org assertJ android.api. So you'll see two assert. So if you have both, it gets kind of confusing because you'll have two assertions classes, and one of them is going to have to be fully qualified if you use them hand in hand. Dot assert that. So we want to assert that the status. So status. Nope, backspace. Dot goes after the parenthesis. Yep. We want to assert that the status is equal to r.string. Whatever the status is. It's a null, so error field. So you can argue it's a little bit longer. Well, you can do a static import for the assert. So it's about the same length. It looks less Lispy. So if you really want to do some closure coding without actually using closure, you don't have to use assertJ. But you also can argue that this is more readable. You're asserting that this is equal to something else, whereas the other one you have to read it like it's an algebraic expression. So if you run this will work. And there's a bunch of functions. There's go to the assert that status dot is one above. Nope, you had it. It was just the assertJ one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after the period, hit Control space so they can see all the functions. So there's tons of stuff. There is not null. There's null checks, is greater than, is less than, all the normal stuff you expect. If you pass it in different parameters, it has different matchers for it. Well, they're not really matchers. They have different assertions for it. So if you rip out status and just put in new array list, and then do the same thing, hit the, yeah. That didn't work. You got Alfred up. One more. I want to see the functions on it. So here, since we have a list, we probably care about what's in the list. So assertJ figures out, oh look, there's a contains, it does not contain, it has, and is sorted. So it has all these matchers based on the object you pass into the assert that statement. So it gives you this very dynamic way of doing testing, but all of your tests kind of look the same. Assert that this dot whatever it is that you want to assert on that. And that's kind of assertJ at a high level. I was playing around with the stuff that Jake did for instrumentation tests, and it was kind of cool. Like you can assert a text view has certain things. You can assert that like a button is visible. So it's like all the properties of a view, you can assert that those properties are there. And it's a lot easier than just doing assert true. Man, I hate assert true. Sorry, guys. Is this step 6? All right. Is there a step 6 answer?
Find out.
All right. You're not typing. There you go. Stash. Dash answer. All right, sweet. So come back. So there's a step 6 dash answer. If you want to start there and go into the login activity, Control Shift O.
Not seeing it.
This file looks the same. Oh, that's weird.
Doesn't to me.
Maybe I don't have a step 6 answer. I don't know. Oh, there it goes. All right. So if you go into the login activity, I ripped out, Android Studio got really smart, goes, you want a login activity, well, let's throw in contacts and autocomplete and permissions to get contacts. So I ripped out a bunch of stuff and just trimmed it down to, you have a login activity. It has a user login task that just sleeps for 2 seconds. And it has 2 validators, email validator and password validator. So we just wrote the password validator. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see that go back to step 6. I lied. Get out of the answer. This is the answer. I'm off by 1 step. I started stepping at 1, not 0. So here we have a password validator, and if you scroll down, you'll see that, scroll down. We implement our password validator, so all that logic we just built out together, we have together. There's an attempt login function that keeps going. That instead of doing all the default logic that Android Studio built out for me, I just replaced it with the password validator, and it does the same stuff. If you keep scrolling, you'll see all the stuff they're doing for the email. Keep scrolling, keep scrolling. So if you want to check if an email is valid, it just contains the @ symbol. So if you guys want, looking at how we did the passwords, you guys can attempt and do the emails yourself. And there's an answer for the email. Well, not an answer, but there's one way of doing the email validator. So if you want to try doing a TDD, same way we did the password, you could do it for emails as well. And if you want to test your work, you can hook it into this login activity and run it in your emulator or on your device or something, and it should still work hunky-dory. I guess in Patrick's talk, he'll talk about how to inject these validators using Dagger. But that's pretty much it. Is that an hour? Yeah, time that. That was pretty much it. Just 6 easy steps on how to get started with unit testing in Android. Hi, Clark's wife. The main thing is when you get to the Android components that will bleed in, you can mock them out and get the behavior you want. But if you don't do that, you'll fail quickly and they'll say it's not mocked. So it allows you to do a lot more behavior-driven development on your Android code down from the UI. I did most of the talking. Do you want to talk? I'll give you the mic.
Nope.
Jerk. It's like Jay and Silent Bob up here. Any questions?
We went through that kind of fast. Do you want to see anything again? Any of the steps again?
Summarize what are all the tools or APIs did you use for PowerMock? What else? AssertJ?
Yeah, so we used assertJ at the end. We used hamcrest. Those are all the matchers, like the is parenthesis, equal to parenthesis. Those are hamcrest matchers. We used jUnit 4, which is the assert that function. Oh, yep. So jUnit 4 gives us assert that. We used hamcrest for the matchers. We used PowerMock to mock out static methods, and transitively we used Mockito to do the behavior on those static methods. And then we used assertJ at the very end as to how to make a more expressive way of testing using assertJ.
What does your workflow look like for bringing in all the static methods, so like assertJ and hamcrest and all those?
You mean like these dependencies, or how to?
No, like instead of writing like assertion dot whatever the thing is and saying okay now this is a static method, how do you usually bring those into your test cases?
Depends. Am I doing TDD or am I like doing real development where I just write it after the code?
Oh.
If I'm doing TDD, I'll probably realize that this is going to be painful, and I'd figure out a different way or better way to probably write the code. Sometimes you can't get around them. Like on fragments, you have like the new instance method, which is a static factory method, and those cases are kind of okay. You can mock out, being like, I don't care what I really get back from when I say new intent, because typically I'm launching it or I'm moving something around with it, and my test shouldn't care about going to another screen. It's for a smaller unit of work. It's not an instrumentation test or an end-to-end test. So I would bring these in, but you have to be a little careful. The versions of PowerMock use Makitos 110. If you use Makito 1.9, you're going to get a bunch of errors because they clash. Their class loaders are a little bit weird. But I just bring them in, and as I come across them, I'm really comfortable with PowerMock, so I just do it. Workflow. I mean, for the most time when I'm doing unit testing, I'm okay having runs with PowerMock because I'm not running with a bunch of stuff. I'm just doing smaller units. So just as I come across some code, I'm like, hey, I need to write tests for this, or I'm about to write code and I want to write tests for it. I know I have the tools available to write the code however it best fits. Is that the answer you're looking for? Kind of.
In other words, it's the tooling question.
What was that?
In other words, it's the tooling question of, is there an easier way of pulling in static methods into debug?
Pulling in static methods. I don't know. I just know those 3 steps for PowerMock. I wish there was an easier way, but the first 2 annotations tell jUnit and PowerMock how to prepare. The third one to do mock static is the one that actually sets up the proxy.
You can do that mock, right?
Not for statics.
That's for mock, right?
Yeah.
You have to do mock static.
Yeah. I just really wish they'd get rid of those stupid build variants. I don't have to switch between instrumentation tests and unit tests, but that's not here yet.
Or you can use.
So, in the case, so the text utils was static. Imagine there was some object that's newed up. You didn't want to, and you wanted to mock that out.
Mm-hmm.
How would you do that?
I would use Makito, and I would just say at mock, go to the password validator test. Yep. So at the very top of the file, you have some dependency of that new object. So I would say at mock. Let's just assume it's another field validator. So field validator, mock or whatever you want to call it. No. You need that class, the variable name, mock. And then inside my setup method, I would do Makito, whatever it's called, capital M. Annotations, Makito annotations, dot init mock. What this does is it says, hey, look for the mock annotations and build a proxy class for them. And then I would say, okay, I have my mock. Once this line runs, it's going to init those. And then inside my password validator, I would pass in that mock. So it's a constructor. I'd move it to constructor time dependencies so that I can mock them out this way. So whenever I say new up something, there's a reason why I'm doing that. So it's a dependency I have on that other class. So I try to move it up to a constructor time dependency. That way I can do it here inside this guy. Just put a mock in this. And then I have a hook to this mock, and I can attach behavior to it as I need to. And I don't have to worry about having special weird things going on and doing things up.
If you're doing a lot of those, won't that get cumbersome to try to do up a lot of those?
If you do a lot of them, you should probably look at switching to something like Dagger with a dependency injection, in which case you could probably set up different configurations in Dagger to inject different ways you want. I'm sure Patch will talk more about it, but you get kind of weird because if you have different configurations with Dagger, you end up building a lot of different ways to wire up your classes. And I know some people look like build variants and stuff, but it just seems like it can explode quickly when you have a lot of dependencies. So just using Makito is nice because I can attach whatever behavior I want at that time, and I only have to have one way of building my object graph. Does that answer your questions, McDub? Okay.
So you can do behavior here.
Oh yeah, the win method doesn't have to be done in your test. It can be done in the setup method as well. Mock. Any other questions? Like what?
UI events, for example.
If you're doing more UI event stuff, you're kind of leaving the realm of unit testing in my mind, and you're entering more to like the instrumentation test. Maybe even using Espresso to handle that. Or you can go even further to like UI Automator and build an end-to-end test. This is made more for like smaller things.
What's the other one for events? Like Monkey.
Oh yeah, Monkey Runner. There's also like Monkey Runner that's, I think it's just command line right now that you can run and it just randomly presses everything. But that's going even further with your tests. Yeah, so basically a good way to do this is you build like a testing pyramid and you say, when you have your testing pyramid, you go, this layer here is all of our unit tests. And then we have a smaller layer of integration tests. And then we have the top part is our end-to-end testing. And so you focus a lot on the large units of work that you do. And then you focus more and more, less and less on automating everything. Because if everything works as a unit, as you integrate it together, you should have less testing to do. Because all your integration tests then say, okay, all these units fall together nicely. So it's something called the testing pyramid.
So Ben, let's bring this to Android. What is a unit test in Android versus an integration test in Android? Can you elaborate
I
on
don't
that?
know. It's like a trick question because a unit test is essentially something you can do with jUnit real easily. You can do integration tests with jUnit, but it's a lot easier to build your integration tests with instrumentation tests, because the instrumentation tests set up an activity and you can go further down the stack and you don't have to worry about like databases or something else. It's just going to be a nightmare to mock out. You can just do that all with an instrumentation test, and you don't have to worry about mocking out everything. So when it comes to Android, I'd really just use jUnit as unit testing only. Anytime you try to do more than just testing one small unit of work, you're going to end up spending so much time mocking out Android's framework that you're probably better off using an instrumentation test to do things with databases and shared preferences and content providers and stuff.
We use Selenium Cucumber for our web client.
Ah,
So, do you have such any tools
Yep.
or frameworks for Android UI testing?
so there is Selenium support for Android. There's an automation team at Kroger that's actually working on it. It's pretty cool because if you use Selenium, it's just Java code, and you're saying, find element by tag, and you find your anchor tag, and you click on it. It's very similar with Java. You say, I want to find this guy by ID and whatnot. But typically, you use Espresso, and there's one more I can't remember. I guess UI Automator. What about you, Patrick? Is that what you've seen?
So,
Robotium, that's it.
Electric.
Yeah. So those Espresso, I guess, just got pulled into Google, so that's kind of nice, and it does all that UI testing for you. It's not quite like Selenium where it kind of runs through things in like a record and play type of manner. It does run as a unit test, but I think was it Spoons that builds on top of it and does that more Selenium style testing. Not doing talks when Greg has a computer anymore. Looks like Patrick's ready to start drinking. You guys have any other questions?
So like one style of unit test naming convention is that you name your unit test after the name of the method that you're testing, and then if you have like variations of the functionality, like
Yeah.
fails or success or whatever,
So-
you put an underscore.
Yep. Validate underscore when password is null, right? So it's the what are you testing, and then the given when expect name after that. That's fine. Yeah, I was just being
Don't
quick.
really like those names, but
Why?
We do something close to that where it would actually name the class validator underscore password is null, and then another underscore with the expected result.
Wow.
Can you do that
So
too?
that you know what, so in this case, you would say throws error.
Yeah, but You know what class it's in because when you get the stack trace, it says, com.company.
But when you look at a list of all the tests that ran, and you see that all the ones that were testing your validator class failed, then it gives you more information about the scope of the issue that you might be seeing.
Okay, I
So
just,
it's the class you're testing, the case you're testing, the expected result. So that when
Huh.
you get a test list, you can at a glance get an idea of what's going on.
oh, because you're getting the methods back. You're not getting the class dot method back. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, that would drive me crazy. I'm just glad that we don't have to start our methods with the word test anymore. Yay, jUnit 4. Underscore, the original at ignore. Patrick's the only guy who ever ignored his jUnit 3 test with an underscore.
Or an X.
Or an X, yeah. Oh, you guys used X? See, underscore stood out more to me. That's where I saw it first, but that's why I used it.
Usually trying to hide them.
I try to give all those tests that I just delete to him, so he checks it in. They ask him, "Why did you delete 1,000 tests?" Oh man. There any other questions? Sweet. If you have any questions, take it up with Silent Bob here. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.